Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. The world celebrates ambition. It's painted as the highest virtue, a golden pathway to success, admiration, and self-worth. We're taught to climb, to hustle, to rise, to dream big and go after it no matter the cost. But Carl Jung would have looked at that message with caution. Because there's a side of ambition that no one talks about. The side that isn't inspiring, that doesn't make it into speeches or motivational posters. It's the side that erodes you slowly from the inside out, while the world claps for your achievements. There is a version of ambition that isn't about vision, it's about escape. A hunger not to build, but to outrun. Outrun the pain, the doubt, the silence. The invisible feeling that if you stop moving, even for a moment, you might have to face something unbearable.
You may not realize it yet, but weakness is not always a lack of strength. Sometimes weakness is the refusal to confront what makes you uncomfortable, to face what frightens you, to admit what you already know but don't want to acknowledge. Weakness doesn't always look like failure. It can hide in the disguise of perfectionism, in the illusion of kindness, in the habit of always taking the safe road. It can be in the lies you tell yourself, the ones that say, "I'm not ready, I don't have time, I just want peace." But Jung wasn't a thinker who offered easy comfort. He didn't believe in chasing success without understanding the self. He warned us about what happens when you live too far from your own center, when ambition becomes a mask, and identity becomes performance.
If you feel stuck, it's not because you're broken, it's because you've made peace with too many things that dishonor you. You've normalized avoidance, you've spiritualized passivity. You've labeled fear as intuition when really, it's self-preservation dressed up as wisdom. And Jung would say, this is your shadow at work. He wouldn't scold you, he wouldn't shame you, but he would shine a light on what lies beneath your hustle, not to humiliate you, but to free you. Because weakness, in his view, isn't just physical. It's spiritual, moral, existential. Weakness is the refusal to claim your wholeness and instead live in the comfort of borrowed beliefs, secondhand truths, and inherited expectations. You scroll, you compare, you envy, you shrink. You wait for the right moment, the right partner, the right sign. You build altars out of uncertainty and call it patience. You keep saying, one day I'll change. But Jung would ask, what if that day never comes?
Because the hard truth is this: no one is coming to save you. Not your next raise, not your relationship, not your audience, not your past. You are your own turning point. And the longer you delay the war within, the more of your life you surrender to illusion. Jung taught that transformation doesn't come from doing more. It comes from facing the parts of yourself you've worked so hard to avoid. He called it the process of individuation, the unfolding of the true self through the integration of all its parts. But here's the problem: the world doesn't reward wholeness. It rewards performance. It rewards the version of you that is polished, controlled, on brand. The version that doesn't make waves. The version that's always striving, but never stopping long enough to ask why. That's the danger, when ambition becomes anesthesia, when you're not chasing meaning but running from silence, when you define your value by your output and call that self-worth.
But no matter how fast you run, your truth follows. And one day it catches up. You wake up and wonder, is this really what I want? You hit your goals and feel empty. You do everything right and still feel like a fraud. That's not failure, that's a signal. A sign that something deeper is trying to speak, and you've been too busy to listen. Carl Jung warned us about the persona, the mask we wear to survive. It's not fake, It's necessary. But when you forget it's a mask, you lose yourself. And the longer you live inside that mask, the more power your shadow gains. Because what you refuse to acknowledge doesn't disappear, it grows. And eventually, it will demand your attention. Through burnout, through disconnection, through the quiet ache that nothing is ever enough.
You can silence your inner voice for a while. You can drown it in meetings, in deadlines, in applause. But eventually the noise quiets. The emails slow, the lights go off, and you're left alone. Not with your achievements, but with yourself. And the question is, do you like who you've become? Carl Jung didn't believe in perfection, he believed in wholeness. That means integrating all parts of yourself, even the ones that ambition tries to bury. The fear, the fragility, the exhaustion, the need to be loved, not for what you do, but for who you are beneath all the doing. He warned of the danger of one-sidedness, of identifying too much with your persona, the polished, productive version of you. Because the more you invest in that image, the more power you give your shadow. That's why burnout often brings existential crisis. Not just I'm tired, but who am I? Not just I need rest, but I don't know what any of this was for.
Because when you've built your life around proving something, what happens when there's nothing left to prove? That's the dark side no one talks about. The grief that comes after success. The hollowness after the finish line. The fear of slowing down. Not because you'll fall behind, but because you'll feel what you've been avoiding all along. You were told to find your why, but sometimes your why is trauma in disguise. You think your work ethic makes you noble, but maybe it makes you numb. You think being busy makes you important, but maybe it keeps you distracted from deeper questions. What if your ambition is not your calling, but your cover? And what if real strength is not in striving, but in stopping long enough to feel? This doesn't mean abandoning your dreams. Jung wouldn't tell you to quit. He would ask you to go deeper, to move from ambition to meaning, from proving to creating, from performing to becoming. Because when you stop chasing and start listening, something changes. You begin to notice the parts of you that were silenced by your pursuit. You remember the joy that existed before the pressure. You reclaim your identity from metrics, milestones, and other people's expectations. And you ask, what do I actually want? Not for applause, but for peace. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not impressive, but integrated, at home in your own skin. Living a life that feels like yours, not just one that looks successful on paper. And that's not a path for the faint of heart, because individuation requires descent into your past, into your pain, into the parts of yourself that you've labeled unproductive, irrational, inconvenient. But in those parts lies your humanity, your story, your strength. Without that descent, ambition becomes sterile, a game of numbers, a sprint with no finish line, a machine with no soul. But when you do the inner work, everything changes. You still create, but from a place of freedom, not fear. You still strive, but your identity is no longer on the line. You still achieve, but not at the cost of your inner life. You begin to see success not as escape,
but as expression. Your ambition becomes a vehicle for truth, not a mask for pain. And maybe for the first time, you feel peace, not because you've stopped moving, but because you've finally made contact with what's real. But this journey inward, this work of understanding your ambition, is not glamorous. No one gives you a trophy for meeting your shadow. No audience claps when you learn how to sit still with yourself. No social media post captures the trembling moment you finally admit, "I'm tired of chasing things that don't nourish me." That's the paradox of transformation. It happens in silence. It happens in the quiet decision to stop performing.
It happens in the private choice to feel your emotions instead of filing them away. It happens when you look at your most polished version and say, "I appreciate what you've done to protect me, but I don't need you to run the show anymore." That moment, that shift, is when ambition begins to evolve. Because here's what Jung understood so deeply: the human psyche is not linear. We do not move from weakness to strength in a straight line. We spiral, we descend, we break, we forget, we remember. And in that spiraling descent, something powerful is forged, not in your resume, but in your soul. The world will not understand this at first. People will ask, "What happened to you when you stop overworking?" They'll wonder if you've lost your edge when you stop chasing every milestone. They'll try to reassign your value, because they can no longer measure you in the way they used to.
But that's because they haven't seen what you've seen. They haven't faced what you've faced. They haven't stood at the edge of their ambition and said, "No more." Not no more dreams, not no more goals, but no more self-abandonment in the name of success. This kind of inner rebellion is rare, because the systems we live in thrive on unhealed ambition. Capitalism, culture, even personal development movements, they all benefit when you equate your worth with your output. When your fear of inadequacy drives you to work harder, longer, faster. But when you begin to detach, when you start doing the work for its own sake, not for applause, something sacred happens. You regain your soul, and with it, your intuition sharpens, your clarity deepens. You begin to sense what's real for you, not what's rewarded, but what's meaningful. Maybe that means creating fewer things, but with more depth. Maybe that means saying no to opportunities that would impress others, but exhaust you.
Maybe that means redefining success altogether. Because what is success if you are never home in yourself? What is ambition if it builds an empire but leaves you spiritually bankrupt? What is achievement if it leaves you lonelier with every rung you climb? Carl Jung knew the answers are not out there, they're within, buried beneath layers of identity you've borrowed to feel safe. And the deeper truth is there is no final destination. There is no mountaintop where you are finally enough. There is only presence, only relationship with your inner world, with your story, with your pain, with your becoming. The moment you stop outsourcing your worth is the moment you begin the real journey, the journey of coming home to yourself. But that journey asks everything of you. It asks you to disappoint others, to let go of roles that once defined you, to allow the version of you who needed to hustle to finally rest.
That version kept you alive. It carried you through the fire. But now it's time to thank it and release it. Because beyond ambition for validation, there is ambition for wholeness, for truth, for impact that arises from integration, not insecurity. You become someone who leads from alignment, not from lack. who creates not from the fear of being forgotten, but from the joy of being present, who reclaims time, silence, slowness, and sees them not as weakness, but as wisdom. This is the path Jung traced over and over again, the movement from persona to presence, from projection to authenticity, from driven to rooted. It's not about doing less, it's about doing what's yours. It's not about losing ambition, it's about awakening the part of you that no longer needs ambition to feel alive. Because here's the secret. You've never been weak for wanting to succeed. That fire in you is sacred. But it's time to build from love, not from longing.
It's time to create from fullness, not from fracture. It's time to be still and remember your worth was never on the line. Not in your bank account, not in your output, not in how much you do or how well you perform. Your worth is in your being. And maybe the greatest success is not how far you go, but how deeply you return.